Sure.
And all right, well, we're back with Sir Alex Pellegrini on a lovely Friday afternoon, and I thought we could talk a little bit about movies and your love of movies, and get into revisiting some of your favorite genres of film. Like I have some questions about horror movies and stuff from the
Sure.
other day at follow up, but I think maybe where we might start would just be some of your early experiences as a child going to the movies, going to the movie theater with your
Yes.
parents maybe, and
Okay.
what sorts of movies were showing that you saw, your earliest memories of them,
Sure,
what it was
sure.
like going to the movies.
Okay.
Yeah,
Be
yeah,
happy to. Yeah.
yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind, and I think I referred to it once before, but I'll bring it up again because it was a profound experience. It was 1959. I was in the theater, in a movie theater down on Market Street, which no
Hmm.
longer exists. I think it was called the Strand. I was there with my best buddy at the time, and we were watching Vincent Price in The Tingler, which is a fabulous movie, where a actual lobster-looking creature develops from the interior of the spine and takes over the person. And when this happened, the seats were vibrating whenever the Tingler came on screen, and so everybody started to have jolts of electricity and yell and scream. Some people exited the theater, people fainted. It was the first time that they had this idea of let's highlight some of the experiences of the viewer by actually making them have a feeling, kinesthetic feelings of what was going on the screen. So that was one of the very beginning things. The folks and I and my sister never really did too much viewing at theaters. We primarily liked viewing at home, and I don't have a lot of movie experience until about 59, where I really started going to the theater. And
And
I
how
was,
old were you
well,
at
let's
that
see,
time?
born in 44. I was about 14, yeah, when I really started to get the notion that movies were of interest and importance. So at that time, you may recall there was Ben-Hur came onto the screen in a few years, Spartacus, Exodus,
Mm.
which was a fabulous movie. Um, the spectacular, special, extended, long range, long extended film that would go on for 4 hours, and you had an intermission in the middle where you had a chance to get your refreshments, use the restroom, come back, and catch the next couple of hours. So, Ten Commandments is another one that comes to mind. So these were spectacles, they were extravagant movies, a lot of cinemascope is what it was called, and bright color, and a team of tremendous, well-known actors were taking the roles in a lot of these. Uh, the one who comes to mind was and Ben-Hur was Charlton Heston, and he did also the Ten Commandments as Moses. So there were a lot of biblical movies too that came out, and they were very, very popular. And then after that, I think I started watching more TV. And the same friend who went with me to the Tinkler, he and I got hooked on Rod Serling's Twilight Zone. So when I met my wife, my future wife, it turns out that she and her brother were fans of the Twilight Zone, would watch the episodes weekly. In the case of my buddy and I, we would watch them separately in our homes and then call each other to comment on what we liked or disliked about that episode. And Rod Serling was like a very important guy in our life. He was like a teacher or a mentor. So we really enjoyed him. And he was very bright. He was a great writer and very clever guy and a good speaker. And so he would engage you if you were able to watch him. He really lured you into these little half-hour episodes. Well-written stories, well acted, black and white, the early days of TV. Then let's skip a little bit, get into college, where the opportunity existed to have film clubs, and I started a film club at my university.
Oh,
With
you started it
yeah,
yourself.
yeah, with a buddy of mine, and the idea was that we would rent films. We had a little bit of money from the university to do this, and so we would rent films and be able to show films. Sometimes they were just 16 millimeter, but it was a lot of fun to be able to project these films. and we would gather together, maybe about 20 students, and enjoy these films, and then have a period of criticism and commentary, which was very, very valuable, because we be able to appreciate each other's points of view. So that lasted, I would say, about 3 years in college. And at the same time, there were theaters here in the city that no longer exist. One was the Surf Theater, which existed out in the avenues. And the story was that you would take the municipal railway Judah line, the end Judah, and it would take you all the way out to the surf, which was near the end of the planet. After the surf, there was the ocean, and that was the end of the world. So you had this idea that you get on the bus from downtown, and it might take you a year to get to the theater. Once you got to the theater, you got to see a Bergman festival, or a Hitchcock festival, or a Truffaut festival.
Where were they showing the films?
They were showing these films at this art house called the Surf. Long gone, but it was a mainstay for people who liked independent film and liked revivals of famous films, specializing, for example, in a particular director. We would have an Orson Welles festival. Let's see, who else comes up? Fellini festival. They showed a lot of foreign films. It was the first time we had a chance to see foreign films.
What did you think of Fellini?
Very much like Fellini.
Yeah.
I especially liked his earthiness and his ability to show realism and the way things really are in Italy, and to use some tremendous actors like Marcello Mastroianni, Sophia Loren, Gina Lollobrigida. He had a whole coterie of fine Italian actors that would do these films. Maybe next week we would see Truffaut, French films. Jules and Jim was a favorite one with Jean Hero. And then we would see Belmondo films. Breathless, it comes to mind.
I've seen that. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the French Humphrey Bogart almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And typically with the French sense of great savoir-faire, if you're a criminal, you're going to be a great criminal. If you're a good guy, you're going to be a great good guy. So they took it to the nth degree.
And the French New Wave films were also they celebrated themselves.
Right.
Because in the film The 400 Blows, I think.
Yes.
That's Truffaut as well, isn't it?
That is Truffaut.
Yeah. When the family goes to the movie theater,
yeah.
and they show them coming out of the theater,
yeah.
the name on the marquee is Paris Belongs to Us. That was the first of the Nouvelle Vague films.
Yes.
So they reference each other and they kind of pat each other on the back, and
right.
and there's an explicit camaraderie.
Yes, yeah, especially Truffaut worshiping Hitchcock. He's written about it, a book, in fact, about the impressiveness of Hitchcock, especially with the ability of Hitchcock to twist things on you. You're suspecting one thing, and suddenly you find 10 minutes later that this plot is taking a turn, and it's going to surprise you. Truffaut liked that area, that element of mystery. We see that in his films. So this would continue through college. The thing was that if you didn't make it all the way out to the surf, you had a chance in the inner city, in the Tenderloin, to go to a theater called Cinecittà, which is the Italian name for their one of their big studios in Rome.
The film city.
Yeah.
Cinema City, right? Cinecittà, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you would go to this little theater in an alleyway near Geary Street downtown, and you would see, it was on Cedar Alley. And they did change their name. I just remember now to Cedar Cinema. So that became very popular for college kids in particular. It was not expensive to go. You might spend $4 or $5 to see maybe a double bill.
Wow.
And again, you had plenty of time to get your food before you would go in. We would go to the old Chelsea, which was a block away, and get our fish and chips. And if we were lucky, we'd sneak in a Hoff and Hoff beer from the Edinburgh Castle, and then go in and watch these movies.
Were they still doing newsreels in those days?
No, not so much then. No, but I do remember newsreels, and they were really great because not only were you getting a capsule of history, but you really had a chance to see how other countries lived. In a snippet of maybe 15 minutes, they'd show you news in Paris, news in London, Rome, and so you'd have little vestiges of life in other cities that you relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd have a Looney Tune cartoon in those days, or you would have Tom and Jerry or any of the Disney cartoons. And then again, intermission. Some of the theaters downtown had an organist who would rise up out of the ground playing an organ interlude while you were getting your refreshments. And then I think the Castro Theater became popular for that. May still be doing that when they open up. You get a chance to really hear some wonderful organ music playing. And in some cases downtown, they would even have a raffle at this point. Based upon your ticket, you might be able to win an opportunity to have a free pass for the theater, or perhaps you'd win from a set of dishes, you might get a plate and saucer. And every time you went to the theater and won something from the raffle, you'd get more things to take home. The wives particularly like having the sets of china that they would bring as a perk for attending on a regular basis and hoping that they would win.
Well, that's so interesting because they incentivize you to go beyond just the prospect of seeing the movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's and things that are pertaining to that aren't just entertainment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were also permissive enough downtown. Some of the grade B theaters or seedier theaters would allow people who are homeless to come in and have the warmth of the theater and be able to maybe even take a nap. So it was user friendly in regard to people on the street who perhaps didn't have the means to be anywhere else to take care of their health. So they could be warm, they could maybe get a cup of coffee and watch movies all day. So there was a permissiveness that, of course, no longer applies, unfortunately.
Well, it also shows that the movie theaters were stratified in a
Yes.
way that represented the strata of society.
Exactly. Yes, the balcony would be where we kids would have to go, usually on matinee Saturday, and the general admission would be for adults sitting in the orchestra in the better seats. And so, yeah, kids upstairs, perhaps people who didn't have an opportunity to be amongst those folks who had more influence or more bucks, or I'm not sure exactly how they developed that, but I do remember kids spent all our time in the balconies, and we would of course be throwing things at the guests below as a way of showing rebellion to having been pushed upstairs. Movies were always a big part of my life. Eventually, I think in college, I just developed this interest in the British horror films, the Hammer films.
Christopher Lee, right?
And Christopher Lee in particular, we talked about before.
Yeah.
Peter Cushing, Donald Pleasance, sometimes Boris Karloff would get involved. Let's see, there was John Carradine, a tremendous actor.
Any relation
Peter
to David?
Peter Lorre.
Oh, Peter Lorre, yeah.
Oh, any relation?
The was it Peter Carradine you said, or
no, John.
John Carradine? Any relation to David Carradine?
Yes, that's his father.
I see.
Yeah, his father preceded. Let's see, I think there were 2 or 3 sons that became fairly well known. But the David is the one I think who had the long run theater movie show about martial arts.
Yeah. What was the name of it? Green Hornet, was it? Or no. I know the one you're talking about, though. I'm the name it escapes me right now,
okay.
but I think
I was not big on that, but I loved the father because he was in so many important, iconic horror films having to do with Dracula and Frankenstein and monsters in particular. So these films took hold of me, I might say, and I started collecting them. At that time, we were watching VHS, and I really got excited about having a collection. Not only seeing the film, but having possession of it so that I can watch it. In many cases, maybe I never did watch it again, but I knew it was there.
Mm-hmm.
A notion struck me, or my wife, and she would say, "Well, let's watch a Hitchcock movie." Well, I probably would have a selection of 10 of them. The problem is the technology changed. We went from VHS to the DVD. I think it was a mistake. Film was better. It had less problems, less glitches, and it was just the real thing. It was really the kind of film that you would go see in the theater rather than this digitized disc.
Mm-hmm.
And so that became an ongoing collectible. And I think I have in the neighborhood, if you can hold on to your seats, close to 3,000 VHS.
Wow.
Eventually I'll have to sell these off. There are collectors, believe it or not, worldwide collectors who are looking for certain particular movies. And certain movies never made it to DVDs. They were in limited release. A lot of horror films, especially things from Italy and Europe and England, did not necessarily go right on.
I can believe that, because if they're going to convert it to the new technology, they have to have some reasonable projection of sales.
That's right.
To justify the production costs.
And this is a genre that's popular, but perhaps not as popular as war movies or cowboy movies or drama or escapist, Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise.
More of a niche audience, would you say?
The Bourne Identity, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the horror film is for a specific audience, whether you like physical horror or psychological. My wife and I are fans of both. I think there's a richness in both aspects of horror, and it's a safe way to release some of the fears you all have. To sit in the comfort of your own living room with your cup of coffee and your popcorn, whatever, and be able to enjoy a scream or two and know that, guess what, you're relatively safe. There may be a monster in the closet, but that's a ways off. Right now I'm sitting in the living room and it's okay, and I'm having a ball.
I was asking you about that, about the vicarious experience of emotion, or let's say the mediated experience of it, the induction of it through movies. Are there certain things that you feel you particularly like to see played out? I mean, it seems there's a theme of almost rehearsing fear responses and confronting things that are ghastly.
Yes.
The interest in horror I find really interesting.
Yes.
What is it about it you think that is so compelling to you?
Yeah, I think I can answer that in particular with an example of a movie that I've seen many times. It is The Tenant by Roman Polanski. Do you know the film?
I know Polanski. I haven't seen that particular film, though. Yeah.
It is available on DVD, and you might be able to take it off of the internet, stream. You might be able to stream it. It's quite good. Are we losing light?
I think we're okay. It's dimming a little bit.
Yeah,
we could move over there.
Do that.
You want to do that? It'll be warmer too.
Yes. Okay. We're going to
Okay.
take a little break.
You got it.
And resume.